Our first reading this morning is from the Gospel according to Mark, chapter 9, verses 30 through 37. They went on from there and passed through Galilee. He did not want anyone to know it, for he was teaching his disciples, saying to them, "The Son of Man is to be betrayed into human hands, and they will kill him. And 3 days after being killed, he will rise again." But they did not understand what he was saying, and were afraid to ask him. Then they came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you arguing about on the way?" But they were silent, for no one on the way had they argued with one another who was the greatest. He sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "Whoever wants to be first must be last of all, and servant of all." Then he took a little child and put it among them, and taking it in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes not me, but the one who sent me."
I told you guys that I went to a sort of old-fashioned all-boys middle school when I was growing up. So one of the things that they did at this middle school is if you got in trouble, you had to write copies. I don't know if anybody else had to do this, but they kept this page called George Washington's Rules of Civility, which were sort of this collection of proverbs. Probably most of them George Washington didn't say or anything like that, and I'm pretty sure I know one of them was a Jefferson quote. But if you got in trouble, you had to write them out longhand. That was the thing that you had to do. This is still loud, you guys. That was the thing that you had to do, was you had to write them out longhand and then turn them into the teacher the next day. The book of Proverbs is a little bit like that. It was a teaching tool for scribes, people who were learning how to write and how to live within the context of the scribal court of Jerusalem, practiced on passages from Proverbs or even the whole book of Proverbs. It was something that they copied out. And I'm almost certain that at some point there was some scribe that didn't clean up their desk correctly or something like that, and they were assigned to write these, just like I used to get assigned to write George Washington's Rules of Civility. So I invite you to listen now to Proverbs 31, 10 through 31. This is an abecedary. So it is from A to Z, about a woman of valor. A capable wife, who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax, and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from far away. She rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and tasks for her servant girls. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hands to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. She opens her hand to the poor, and she reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of her household when it snows, for all her household are clothed in crimson. She makes herself coverings. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known at the city gates, taking his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She supplies the merchant with sashes, strength and dignity for her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her happy. Her husband, too, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her a share in the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the city gates. This is the word of the Lord. So I've been reading and rereading this passage as I get ready for this week, and there's one thing that just keeps absolutely jumping out at me every time I read it. Does her husband do anything? She wakes up before dawn to provide food for her household. She gives tasks to all of her servants. She brings the food from afar. She imports wool and flax. She considers a field, buys it, plants a vineyard, all while weaving and sewing, not just to clothe her entire family, but also to sell at the market. And she still finds time to volunteer and care for the poor. Whew. The first verse, the NRSV gives us the translation, a capable wife who can find. But translation is a funny thing. And the word for wife can also mean woman. The word for woman and wife are the same in Hebrew, which maybe tells us something about that society a little bit. And the word capable has a much more military connotation than is given there. So a closer translation might be a woman of valor. Military terms keep coming up over the course of this poem. And so in a lot of ways, it's sort of a heroic epic of the woman who gets things done. It is almost a battle poem. She's the hero of all of the things that she accomplishes in her life. By the way, many of the things that she does run counter to how we understand sort of traditional women's work in the modern era. She buys and owns property. She works in the field. She manages her own business, runs negotiations, makes deals, has employees. If we could make a distinction between Martha Stewart as the magazine, as the lifestyle magazine, and then Martha Stewart in reality as the business magnate, she is more the latter than the former, right? Much less the ideal of a household and much more the person who runs things and who is a businesswoman who is competent in everything that she does. So what is heroic about her is her lived practical wisdom. The book of Proverbs is all about wisdom. Where other wisdom texts like Job and Ecclesiastes have their heads way up in the clouds, they want to ask questions about the place of humanity in the universe and what is the relationship between humanity and God. Proverbs has its feet firmly in the ground. Proverbs tries to answer the question of how do you build a life of dignity in the real world. The woman valorized in Proverbs 31 is a personification of the wisdom that is talked about in the book of Proverbs all the time. She embodies the practical thesis of the book. If you work hard and stay true to God, you will be rewarded with success. But of course, success for her looks different from what success did for most other people. Assuming she's a real person and not just an exemplar that embodies sort of every possible good characteristic, she is the wife of a noble. She has servants or slaves in her household. She has enough money that she can buy property, plant a vineyard, and then pay taxes on it for years until it becomes fruitful. She can get flax imported from Egypt. She has a good education. She knows how to sew and teach her servants and her children. None of these things would have been possible for everybody in that community. None of these things would have been possible for the slaves in her household, or even for most of the people in the city where she lived. Simply put, she embodies a woman of valor, but from the perspective of the 1%, right? This is a scribal text written by scribes, and people who were scribes had a lot of education. If you had education, you had money, because you had time to spend in class and not raising livestock or working in the fields or all the things you did. And so this is very much a moneyed class interpretation of what it is to be a woman of valor. So when we try to translate this for ourselves, we don't have to just make the gap from ancient to modern. We have to recognize that there's a class translation that we have to make as well. Because I don't think a lot of us have servants. And I don't think a lot of us have so much money that we can speculate on investments in our free time or do all of the things that she is able to do. Her household is a unique one. And it maybe doesn't line up with necessarily all of the things that make up our lives. So as I've been thinking about this, I've been thinking about what makes a woman of valor in the modern era? What does it mean to be a woman of valor who doesn't have all of these advantages? And I've been thinking about this, I've been reminded of some of the people in my life who have offered their own proverbs to me. A woman I knew in Texas taught me that if you put soap out on the windowsill and you let it bake in the sun, it lasts a lot longer. And she taught me how to stretch a meal's worth of meat into a week. I have folks online that talk about if you're homeless, a gym membership can keep things together for a few weeks until you can get back on your feet so you don't lose your job. And my friends have talked to me about navigating chronic illness, or what to do when your kid has learning disabilities, and how to advocate for them within the school system and within your own home and church and community. These folks know how to live a life with dignity. They know how to succeed without stomping on somebody else. They know how to make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. And if you look at the true, honest stories of everyday women and men, you will find that there are people of valor everywhere. People who can negotiate debt better than any government because they have to. People who've never held just one job, but have always learned how to put things together from this and from that and find a way to scrape by. People who know exactly what an IEP is and how many phone calls and threats and cries it takes to get the organization to put a plan in action. People who have had no role models, and so they became role models. People who have had to take kids to a work event and take work to a kids event. People who fought for their own seat at the table and then fought to let others join them there. Valiant heroes who have put their energy into making the best out of their life without making anybody else's life worse in order to do so. Being a woman of valor, and really we can open this up to just about everybody, because none of the things that she did in Proverbs 31 are things that all of us are not called or sometimes doing in our lives. It's not about having all of the things that she had or the perfect life that she lived. It's about learning what it takes to build a life of dignity for yourself and others. If any of these things are you are a person of valor. It's not about making the perfect household. It's not about having it all. It's about figuring out the thing you do and doing it with diligence and decency and devotion to God. Now, the reason that I feel so confident saying all of these things about the woman of valor, even though they don't quite line up with the picture that we get in the Bible, is because I know that there's only one person in the Bible outside of the book of Proverbs who is called a woman of valor. And her life was far from perfect. She didn't have a household with servants and imported flax to weave and sell. Her husband got sick, and she took care of him, and then he died, and she had to move in with her mother-in-law. She went on public assistance so that they could have something to eat. Her children didn't raise her. She was childless. Her name was Ruth. She was neither wife, nor mother, nor merchant. And yet, before he takes her as a wife, Boaz tells her, the whole assembly, that is everybody in our community, everyone I know, knows that you are a woman of valor. It's not about that perfect life. It's about living the life that you have with decency and a genuine desire to create something beautiful for yourself and the people around you. So children of God, your life does not have to be perfect to be honorable. Be brave. Be bold. Be unrepentant about who you are. Be ever willing to lend a helping hand and never afraid to ask for one. But above all, live your life as if God cares about what you do with it. As if the people that are around you, the people whose lives that you touch matter. As if the mess of your daily life is a holy calling. Because God does, they do, and it is. And someday, the whole assembly, the whole community of saints will gather and proclaim that you have lived a life of honor and valor, wherever your battlefield may have been. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.